South Korea's economy is one of the biggest success stories in modern history. But what if I told you this success is hiding a ticking time bomb? On the surface, South Korea is a powerhouse, home to global giants like Samsung and Hyundai. The country is known for its cutting edge technology, world famous entertainment industry, and impressive economic growth. But beneath this polished image lies a harsher reality, one shaped by relentless overwork, brutal academic competition, and a shrinking population that threatens the very foundation of its success. This isn't just about numbers or economic reports. It's about real people struggling in a system that demands everything from them. So today, we are going beyond the headlines to uncover the hidden cost of South Korea's rise. Because behind the glamour, there is a growing crisis that could change the future of the nation forever. Let's get into it. South Korea's rise from a war-torn nation to one of the world's largest economies is nothing short of extraordinary. In the 1950s, after the devastation of the Korean War, the country was one of the poorest in the world. Most of the population relied on agriculture, and the idea of South Korea becoming a technological and economic leader seemed impossible. But in just a few decades, it transformed into a global powerhouse, now ranking among the top economies in the world. The turning point came in the 1960s when the South Korean government, under President Park Chung-hee, launched a series of ambitious economic reforms. These policies prioritized industrialization, infrastructure development, and, most importantly, exports. The government provided financial support to key industries, encouraged innovation, and established strict work ethics that became deeply embedded in the country's culture. As a result, South Korea went from relying on foreign aid to producing world-class products that would eventually dominate global markets. If you own a smartphone, drive a car, or use household appliances, chances are you have encountered South Korean products. Samsung, Hyundai, and LG are not just big names domestically, they are global giants. Samsung, in particular, is the largest smartphone manufacturer in the world, competing directly with Apple. Hyundai has become a dominant force in the automobile industry, with its vehicles found in almost every corner of the world. LG has made its mark in consumer electronics and home appliances. These companies represent South Korea's ability to innovate and compete on an international scale. But their success wasn't just luck. It was fueled by decades of government support, aggressive expansion strategies, and an intense corporate culture that demands peak performance from its workers. South Korea's economic boom didn't happen naturally. It was the result of carefully crafted government policies. The nation followed a model of export-led growth, where industries were encouraged to produce goods primarily for foreign markets. This strategy allowed South Korea to generate massive revenue, attract foreign investment, and build an impressive technological infrastructure. The government also invested heavily in education, creating a highly skilled workforce that could drive innovation and development. In the 1990s and 2000s, South Korea became a leader in semiconductor production, shipbuilding, and high-speed internet infrastructure. Today, Seoul is one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world, and South Korea consistently ranks high in global innovation indexes. But this rapid success came at a price. The South Korean work culture is notorious for its extreme hours, hierarchical corporate structures, and intense pressure to perform. The phrase "palai palai," which means hurry hurry, perfectly describes the country's fast-paced, high-pressure environment. Workers often put in 60 to 80 hours a week, and the culture of gapjil, abuse of power by superiors, makes corporate life even more stressful. This pressure isn't limited to the workplace. It starts in childhood. Students endure brutal competition for spots in top universities, facing immense academic stress from a young age. The result? Burnout, declining mental health, and one of the highest suicide rates in the world. South Korea's economic miracle is undeniably impressive, but the relentless drive for success has created deep societal challenges. In the next section, we'll explore how this extreme work culture is affecting the country's future. South Korea's rapid economic rise came at a staggering human cost. Its people are among the most overworked in the world. Long hours, Relentless corporate expectations and a culture that glorifies exhaustion have pushed the nation to a breaking point. The consequences are dire, with rising burnout, deteriorating mental health, and even deaths linked to overwork. Despite government efforts to fix this, the system remains deeply entrenched, making real change difficult. South Koreans work some of the longest hours in the world. Even after government reforms aimed at reducing excessive labor, the average South Korean worker still puts in around 1900 hours per year, far higher than the OECD average. The consequences of this brutal schedule are devastating, with a phenomenon known as gavarosa, which translates to death by overwork, becoming disturbingly common. Heart attacks, strokes, and severe exhaustion claim the lives of employees who simply can't keep up with the impossible demands placed on them. The issue is so severe that some workers collapse at their desks or die suddenly after years of stress and sleep deprivation. Night shifts, unpaid overtime, and the expectation to be available 24/7 have created an environment where rest is seen as laziness rather than a necessity. Much of this culture is fueled by chaebols, massive family-controlled conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. These companies dominate South Korea's economy and provide the majority of jobs, meaning workers have little power to negotiate better conditions. In a chaebol-driven system, loyalty and obedience are valued more than personal well-being. Employees are expected to work long hours without complaint, often sacrificing their personal lives for the company. Leaving the office before your boss? Unthinkable. Taking a vacation? Practically career suicide. This rigid hierarchy makes it nearly impossible for employees to challenge the status quo even when their health is at stake. Startups and smaller companies offer little relief as they often try to mimic the success of chaebols by enforcing the same grueling work expectations. The result? A nation where work dominates life, with few opportunities for balance or escape. With relentless pressure at work and no room for self-care, South Korea has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. The stress starts early as students are pushed to their limits to secure a spot in a prestigious university. That same pressure carries over into adulthood, where job security is tied to a person's ability to endure extreme workloads. Anxiety, depression, and burnout are widespread, yet mental health remains a taboo topic. Many employees are afraid to seek help, fearing it will make them look weak in the eyes of their employers. South Korea has advanced rapidly in technology and infrastructure, but when it comes to mental health, it remains stuck in the past. Recognizing the severity of the issue, the South Korean government has introduced policies to curb excessive working hours. In 2018, the legal work week was reduced from 68 hours to 52 hours, aiming to give employees more time to rest and improve work-life balance. But here's the problem. Companies often ignore these laws, finding loopholes or pressuring workers to clock out on paper while continuing their tasks off the record. Many employees also fear repercussions for not working beyond the required hours, believing it could hurt their chances of promotions or job security. Without a cultural shift in how success is defined, these policies remain largely ineffective. For real change, South Korea needs more than just regulations. It needs a transformation in workplace expectations and societal values. In the next section, we'll explore South Korea's biggest challenge yet, a demographic crisis that threatens to undo decades of economic progress. South Korea's work culture crisis doesn't begin in the office. It starts in childhood. The nation's obsession with education has created one of the most brutal schooling systems in the world, where students face relentless pressure to succeed from an early age. The competition is cutthroat and the stakes are impossibly high. A student's entire future is often determined by one exam, and those who fail to meet expectations are left struggling to find their place in society. Education in South Korea is not just about learning, it's a battle for survival. The ultimate goal? Gaining admission to one of the country's elite universities, particularly the Sky School's Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University. These institutions are seen as the golden ticket to a secure job at a top company, and the competition to get in is nothing short of ruthless. From a young age, students are pushed to excel in every subject, with their entire school experience centered around preparing for the Sonung, South Korea's infamous university entrance exam. This single test determines their academic and professional futures, making it a source of unimaginable stress for millions of teenagers each year. The pressure to perform is so intense that some students suffer from severe anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts, all before they reach adulthood. A typical school day in South Korea is already long, but for most students, the real work begins after school. Enter Hagwons, private cram schools where students spend hours upon hours preparing for tests, memorizing facts, and refining their skills in math, science, and English. It's not uncommon for students to attend Hagwons until midnight or later, leaving little time for sleep or relaxation. These after-school academies have become a multi-billion-dollar industry fueled by desperate parents who will do anything to give their children a competitive edge. The result, a nation where childhood has been replaced with endless studying, where free time is seen as a waste, and where creativity and individuality take a backseat to test scores. For many South Korean families, education is a financial and emotional burden. Parents invest huge portions of their income into private tutoring, hagwons, and extracurricular lessons, sometimes going into serious debt just to ensure their child has a shot at a better future. The pressure from parents can be overwhelming. Many children feel like they are carrying the weight of their family's expectations, knowing that failure is not an option. This stress doesn't just come from school rankings. It's deeply ingrained in South Korean culture, where academic success is tied to family honor and societal status. But what happens to those who don't make it? In South Korea's rigid system, there is little room for mistakes. Students who fail to get into top universities often find themselves locked out of the best job opportunities, struggling to secure stable employment. The country's intense focus on academic achievement leaves little support for alternative career paths, making failure feel like a life sentence rather than a temporary setback. Many young South Koreans crumble under this immense pressure, feeling lost and hopeless if they don't meet expectations. This sense of failure contributes to the country's high youth unemployment rates and mental health crisis as young adults struggle to find a place in a society that only values top performers. The education system, once seen as the foundation of South Korea's success, is now pushing its youth to the breaking point. But the country faces an even bigger crisis, one that could determine its survival. In the next section, we'll explore South Korea's looming demographic disaster and how it threatens to undo decades of economic progress. South Korea's rapid economic rise was built on a hard-working population, but now the country faces a crisis that could undo all of its progress. A demographic collapse. The birth rate has fallen to the lowest in the world, and fewer people are choosing to marry or start families. The country is aging fast, and with fewer young workers to sustain the economy, South Korea's future is on shaky ground. South Korea's fertility rate has dropped to an alarming 0.72 births per woman in 2023, far below the 2.1 needed to maintain a stable population. This isn't just a crisis, it's an existential threat. If this trend continues, South Korea's population will shrink drastically, leading to severe labor shortages, declining productivity, and an unsustainable pension system. So why aren't people having kids? The answer lies in financial insecurity, intense work culture, and societal expectations. Young Koreans, especially women, see parenthood as an impossible burden with little support from employers or the government. Raising a child is incredibly expensive, and the pressure to provide top-tier education makes the decision even harder. Many simply can't afford to have kids, while others don't want to sacrifice their already fragile work-life balance. For decades, marriage and family were seen as essential life milestones, but today, more young Koreans are choosing to stay single. The biggest reason? Financial instability. Real estate prices in South Korea, especially in Seoul, have reached insane levels. A small apartment in the capital can cost hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, making home ownership nearly impossible for the younger generation. Without a stable home, many feel that marriage and children are simply out of reach. Even those who do get married face challenges. Women, in particular, are expected to balance full-time jobs with traditional family roles, a task that feels overwhelming in a country where workplace equality is still a struggle. As a result, more women are rejecting marriage and motherhood altogether, choosing careers and personal freedom over societal expectations. South Korea's younger generation is often referred to as the Tempo generation, meaning three giving ups: dating, marriage, and children. But for many, it doesn't stop there. Some go even further, abandoning home ownership, financial independence, and even personal dreams. Why? Because the system feels rigid against them. With relentless work pressure, unaffordable housing, and a society that values success over well being, many young Koreans feel hopeless about the future. They see their parents' sacrifices, the long hours, the lack of personal freedom, and decide they don't want the same life. Instead, they focus on themselves, prioritizing travel, hobbies, and personal happiness over traditional expectations. The South Korean government knows the country is facing a demographic disaster and they have tried to fix it. They have offered cash incentives, tax breaks, and even subsidies for families who have children. But these policies aren't working because money alone isn't enough to solve the deeper issues of overwork, high living costs, and gender inequality. Young Koreans don't just need financial help. They need real social change. Until the government tackles the root causes, a toxic work culture, unaffordable housing, and outdated gender roles, South Korea's population decline will only get worse. So, South Korea's rise from post-war poverty to global economic powerhouse is nothing short of a miracle. But as we have seen, that success came with an immense hidden cost: a relentless work culture, brutal education system, and a demographic crisis that threatens the country's future. South Korea is now at a crossroads. On one side, it stands as a symbol of innovation, resilience, and economic strength, home to some of the world's biggest tech giants and cultural exports like K-pop and K-dramas. But on the other side, the cracks in this foundation are growing deeper. A generation burned out by extreme work expectations, students crushed under unrealistic academic pressure, and a society struggling with historically low birth rates. The question is, can South Korea fix these issues before it's too late? The government has tried, from reducing work hours to offering cash incentives for childbirth, but so far, these efforts haven't addressed the root causes. What needs to change? A real shift in work-life balance, an education system that prioritizes well-being over endless competition, and a society that supports young people instead of pushing them to their limits. Without these changes, South Korea risks seeing its economic miracle turn into a slow-moving disaster. So what do you think? Is South Korea's success sustainable, or is it heading for collapse? Should the country reform its work and education systems, or is this simply the price of being an economic powerhouse? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. South Korea isn't the only economic giant facing an uncertain future. Germany, Europe's largest economy, is struggling with its own set of problems. From an energy crisis to a declining workforce, click on the next video to find out why Germany's economy is falling apart and what it means for the world.